Attention, stupid humans. All orcs are evil, just like Gary Gygax and Professor Tolkien warned you. Series 1 of these orc enamel pins are on Kickstarter again for a very limited time. Pick your clan, join the Horde, and cause some mayhem. Go to badorcs.com. That's badorcs.com. Now watch this stupid video.
Hello and welcome back to Clownfish TV. It is me, Geeky Sparkles, and it's just me for this video because I have some ranting to do and I don't know if Kneon wanted to hear it. So it's just me on this video. He's going to be back with some other videos later. But I want to talk about Gina Carano again because the more I think about it, the madder I get. This whole situation should never have happened. And, you know, where she's getting a settlement, and I'm glad, and I stand by the fact that a lot of people were upset that we didn't go to Discovery, and I get that. I would love to have seen Discovery too. I also know how taxing these can be. They are so exhausting, so hard. You feel like you can't move on, everything else. So I completely don't fault her for settling this one at all. And it's probably going to get her what she wanted and what she claimed she was going to go after in the first place. That being said, the media is really pissing me off because a lot of these news outlets that were slamming her before are having these headlines, oh, this is the way she won and stuff like that. So we're going to look at these. We're going to talk about it. I will probably be ranting, so I'm going to give you the heads up if you have to adjust your volume. So before we get into any further, please like and subscribe. If you do, I will give you a woohoo. And we're going to talk about this. First of all, I want to congratulate Gina Carano because you know what, girl, you stuck to your guns as you should have, and you're a fighter and it shows, and you came out on top. That does not happen for everyone, especially when they go against Disney, which I think lends credence to the fact that the evidence was going to be so damning when it came out. That's probably why they kept doing everything they could to stall the lawsuit on multiple attempts and to try to sabotage by, until they were they were compelled to turn over documentation because they were like stalling it out to not do it and all those things. And I think the more that these other actors in the MCU and in Lucasfilm and stuff were talking, like Mark Hamill, Mark Ruffalo, Pedro Pascal, and even Rachel Zegler, the more they kept going off, the more of a case she had. And Disney, they weren't going to win. They don't settle like this unless they know either they're going to be outed and it's going to be damning, or they know they're not going to win, or yes. So that's going on. We talked about that many times. I have an article on Pirates and Princesses. You can see piratesandprincesses.net. That's my Disney blog, Universal blog, theme park, pop culture blog, fashion, that kind of stuff out there. But I did a story, and I've done several of these stories, and I'm doing it again. And I said Gina Carano should not have been fired in the first place because it was not capitulation. Because what's going on now is a lot of these places are arguing, they just capitulated. Disney capitulated to the hate mob. I'm like, no. There was capitulation involved, but it was on the side of Lucasfilm and Disney, and the fact that they let these hate mobs of probably a small amount of people with a lot of alt accounts dictate, her firing. I also personally believe that there are people with Lucasfilm and Disney that were also, behind the scenes, rallying to get her fired. And I think that might have come out in the documentation Discovery, but I don't know that for sure. I'm saying in my opinion, based on what I've seen, I think that was going on. But I noticed today that they were seeing these headlines, deadline. This really is the way. Gina Carano pile drives Disney over Mandalorian firing with settlement and job offers, which is good. This is Dominic Patton, who's giving a very, take about it. He's an executive editor, legal, labor, and politics. However, because like all these other mainstream outlets, they have writers on both sides. So when it first happened, this Anthony, which we talked about before, D'Alessandro, whatever your name is, kept making article after article bashing Gina Carano. This is back when it happened. The Mandalorian actress Gina Carano and UTA part ways in the wake of social media controversy. And they go down here talking about her posts. Then, the actress who has a history of speaking out on social media crossed the line with comments that compared current divided political comment to Nazi Germany. At least they were fair about her talking about the divided political comment. Because climate, that's true. That's what her post was about. Meanwhile, you have these other people. Disney settles Gina Carano lawsuit after firing her from Mandalorian for comparing being conservative to being Jewish. That's not what she did. That's not what she said. But places like the New York Post are perpetuating this lie that isn't true. That is not what she said at all. You keep saying that. That is what people keep thinking she deserves to be fired based on this stuff, but you don't have the facts. That's not what she said. It's what you're hearing she said, but that wasn't what she said. Here, People Magazine. Gina, why was she fired? Fired for everything you know about controversies and why she's sued. And you go down here, and they're saying that she was fired because she faced controversy from posts on social media. She put a statement on her Instagram stories in February. She compared the treatment of conservatives in the U.S. during the treatment of Jewish people in Nazi Germany. That is not what she said, okay? What she actually said, which I have in my article here, is, I have it down here, I have the quote. She said, Jews are beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to this point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jewish. How is it any different from hating someone for their political views? There is no party being listed here. She never said conservatives and conservatives are the ones to be. She just said people are being really hateful towards each other in general. It was a polarized political climate statement. It wasn't saying that conservatives were the Jews. It wasn't saying that the Democrats were the Jews. What it was saying was people are turning against each other over politics and not even looking at people as people, but as who they voted for, what flag they have in their yard. And they're willing to hate people, to crush people, to destroy people, to want them harmed simply because they voted differently than them. And that is completely true. And this was a historically accurate, post to begin with. Later on, Disney's, they own National Geographic. National Geographic did an article and said something almost exactly the same thing like a year or two ago in an article. But it was okay when they said it. See, this is the problem. Then the media is not helping. They're saying this stuff, but then you do have, articles I think are great. Like this one here, the Los Angeles Times. Disney's settlement with the Mandalorian actor Gina Carano isn't capitulation. Firing her was. Exactly. Because what happened was, again, you all know this probably if you watch my video, but someone might be new here. What happened was, because of the character of Cara Dune in The Mandalorian and her being a big, strong, buff woman, independent woman who held her own, and she had that little side braid going on, which kind of mimicked the half-shaved head, people in a certain communities decided that was the representation. The character never was disclosed, who they sleep with or what they like. That was never important, which is another reason why it was a good character. It was never relevant. Never said that the character, Gina Carano, herself, she never said she was their representation. They decided she was representation. So what happened was a bunch of people on social media were mad at her because she wasn't putting pronouns in her bio. Again, I want to remind you that a bunch of people at Lucasfilm also did not have pronouns in their bio. Other actors involved in The Mandalorian did not have pronouns in their bio. But because they decided she was the representation. She never said she was. She never gave any indication she was. They decided. And then they harassed her. And when she said, no, I understand why you want me to put them in my bio. I get it. I stand by you. If you want to put them in your bio, I 100% support you. I'm against bullying of any kind. Nothing she said was transphobic against anyone. She just said, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing it. It's not really something I want to do on my own personal bio. But I support you if you want to do it. By all means, if you have your pronouns in your bio, go you. I support you 100%. And that somehow meant she was transphobic and they had to spend months hating on her and harassing her, to which Lucasfilm did nothing about the entire time. But when Moses Ingram had a couple, like very few, comments that were racist-y, they put a statement out. Meanwhile, Gina Carano was harassed incessantly and they said nothing because she was seen as being conservative. And that's what the whole thing's about, because they had people on the other side who, like Pedro Pascal, Mark Ruffalo, Mark Hamill, Rachel Zegler, posting absolute shitty things. Pedro Pascal still won't shut up. And no one's telling him to shut up. Rachel Zegler, at least they flew out and told her to knock her shit off. But, hey, they only correct women? Is that what's going on here? Because Disney, you're not doing yourself any favors, because you have a complete double standard. And no matter how you look at it, it's either because you're against women or against people who lean towards the right. It's one of the two. because those are the only two things that are similar. Rachel Zegler and Gina Carano both got a talking to. Gina Carano got fired without even being told. Rachel Zegler at least got a talking to. And then, Zegler and company and all the men that are posting stuff are allowed to post it. But this is all going on the whole time she's in a lawsuit. So, of course, it's looking bad for Disney. All right? It's looking very bad. But this LA Times, and it's a woman, who wrote this article saying that wasn't capitulation. Now, she basically says, maybe some of the things that she said weren't great, but she was wrongfully terminated. The settlement details not been made public, but Lucasfilm released a statement praising her on-set professionalism. A lot of her co-workers or co-stars all said great things about her. Giancarlo Esposito said he was one of the favorite people he had to work with. Everybody who worked with her had only good things to say about her. And they said they're hoping they look for opportunities to work with her in the future. I can't read today. So they said, am I here to remain, to beg everyone to remain calm and avoid using the 4Cs cancel culture and corporate capitulation? No and no. And they're talking about cancel culture, how it's an ongoing thing and stuff. And then they're saying about corporate capitulation is alive and well. However, that's not what happened here. There is capitulation, but it was Disney capitulating to the hate mob is what was going on. And because Gina Carano wouldn't capitulate, since that's our word of the day, Gina Carano wouldn't capitulate to the hate mob. They did everything they could to destroy her. They celebrate when they ruin you completely. But she fought back and won because what happened was not right. It wasn't fair. It wasn't ethical. It wasn't legal. Obviously, they settled. There's so many things here that was wrong with this. And at the time this happened, it was like 2020, 2021. The mentality, there was definitely a vocal minority controlling everything. That's when we had the DEI stuff. That's when we had, the Reimagine Tomorrow and all that crap at Disney. And it was this, that you want to summarize a quote unquote woke mind virus. It was that. And now we're here at another place in time where people, they got so sick of it. A lot of people who were leaning left even said, I don't really like Trump that much, but I voted for him because I couldn't stand any more of what we were getting. You guys have this mentality and in some cases mental illness has driven people so far the other way that they're willing to vote for people they don't really like that much just because they don't want you in office because you're so toxic. This is just a summary of everything, and nothing she ever said was ever abusive towards trans people, LGBTQ people, nor was it saying that the conservatives were Jewish people in the Holocaust. No, she never said that. That's not what she said. And you're putting words into her mouth. She was trying to say is people are so politically pickled that they are willing to hate on others simply over something as ridiculous as who you vote for. And they're basing everything on you as if you're black and white. There's no gray area. It's just you like or hate them based solely on what you perceive them to be. You don't even have to be like a conservative, but if they think you are, they're going to tear you apart. You don't have to be a liberal, but if they think you are, they tear you apart. I can tell you for a fact, on certain videos, we're libtard snowflakes and we're alt-right Yahtzees in the same comments. Because we've never changed who we are. We've always said who we are. We are in the middle. We are moderate. Kneon has gone more libertarian tendencies because of everything. I have actually probably could be considered swinging more to the right now when I always leaned left. I never changed. I've never changed any of my opinions. I am exactly where I was before. The problem is anything, slightly right of far left is considered alt-right Nazism. And it's insane. And I think the majority of people are in the middle. And the majority of people are tired of being told they're terrible people because they don't, go too hard one way or the other. And when you have the media and people getting fired over things like that comment was completely, wasn't even remotely what they said it was. And it's obvious that she's gotten fired and she's the only one that got fired and she leaned a certain way compared to the other people. People are like, this is too far. This is like, McCarthyism. This is insane. It's a witch hunt and it's ridiculous. And I'm mad at the media because the media keeps like perpetuating this whole thing. They're saying she won, but she still said the conservatives were Jewish people. She didn't. That's not what she said. You look stupid. Stop talking. Because anybody who has any ounce of reading comprehension can look at that and see that she's talking about the political climate in general and that all they're doing, the media and, certain parties or whatever, were turning people against each other and extremes were going at it and they were trying to turn people against each other. And that's how you end up with a situation where people can be rounded up. And it's a concerning thing. And I 100% agree with her. And if you've watched our videos for any length of time, you know that I 100% agree with that. And so does Kneon. We've mentioned it many, many, many times. Okay. So the media needs to sit down and shut the fuck up, because you're just looking really stupid because you keep trying to perpetuate. She won, you're mad. And a lot of these journalists, are the ones that are behind a lot of the bullshit narratives and stuff, especially in pop culture journalism. I'm going to say you're going to see it more in pop culture journalism than you're going to see it in mainstream media. But they're salty as fuck because she won. And I'm sorry, yeah, she settled, but she won. Disney still should apologize. You should apologize, Disney. I mean, if you're smart, you'd apologize, because a lot of people in the middle are sick of your shit. So you'd apologize, but you won't do that publicly because that requires balls. Mickey's been castrated a long time ago. Mickey used to be spicy, and he used to have spunk, and he used to be really, really cool. And, and they've nerfed him over the years. But the media needs to stop this. I did find one of the article I thought was interesting, and it's a very good question. And I applaud them for asking it. Hollywood in Toto into I don't know what it is. Whatever it is. They're saying, why didn't Pedro Pascal stand up for Gina Carano publicly? And that's a damn good question. Why didn't he? Why didn't he stand up for her publicly? Because she's said many times she won't speak ill of him. And she said many times that they're still friends and that they're close. And, he obviously was talking to her about the situation. And according to reports, basically he told her just to put the pronouns up and they'll leave her alone. And she refused to do it, which I get that. As somebody who fights back too, I get that. Why should you have to do what they want because they're demanding you do it? And if you bend the knee, and I hate using that terminology, bend the knee, but it's true. If you bend the knee, then that never ends. If you give an inch, they'll take a mile, never ends. If you cave on one thing, then they think that they can determine your whole life. Because remember, you're supposed to accept them. You're supposed to support them. But if you don't support them, they are allowed to be as vile and hateful and intolerant and complete with everything they say they claim they hate towards you, because they're mentally ill weirdos. Not because they might be LGBTQ, or not because they might be different race or gender or sexual orientation, but because these people that are this obsessed, a lot of people who are trans thought this was too far too. Because they're normal people who aren't mental in the head, okay? The mentally ill people think it's an all or nothing. And that doesn't represent everyone who identifies as trans. I'm going to say that very clearly. There are a lot of trans people who thought this was wrong, who thought this is too far, who don't think people should have to be forced to do something they don't want to do, because they themselves don't like that when they were forced to do stuff they didn't want to be, or be what they didn't want to be. So they're not going to demand others do that either. It's these emboldened people who were given way too much power, and they abused that power. Those are the people that are behind the problem. But Pedro Pascal never once came out and stood up for Gina Carano. Other people did. Other actors did speak out for Gina Carano. Even like the group Kiss and stuff spoke out in her behalf, because they're like, this is creepy and weird, and why should she be fired for that when she didn't say anything wrong? Other people stood up for her. Pedro Pascal did not. He's the one that told her just to stick her pronouns in there and be done with it. Pedro Pascal is also constantly stepping in it against Trump, against J.K. Rowling. Pedro Pascal has a trans sister, which might be partly why he didn't do anything. But nothing she said was anti-trans. And even the people they sent over, at one point they sent people over to talk to her. And when they did, they were very nice people, she said. And they even said they were sorry she got caught up in this, because she clearly seems like she's not, against anyone. They also tried to mandate that she be on a Zoom call with a bunch of employees and people from Lucasfilm and Disney who were personally offended because they themselves identified differently. And it was like a Spanish Inquisition. And they tried to do that to her, which I don't think she actually went through with. But they sent people over and they said that they felt bad she got caught up in it. But Pascal could have stopped this. People listened to him, but he was too afraid to, or the fact he'd make his sister mad. He said he weighs in to other arguments using less than diplomatic language. That's his right, of course, and it can alienate audiences, which it's been. And Pedro Pascal is starting to burn his bridges very quickly. So why did he not say anything about Gina Carano when they were unfairly maligning her? And he was basically, he knows she's a nice person. He was telling her, just put the pronouns in there so they'll leave you alone. and everything else. He didn't say anything. When they fired her, other people stood up for her. Where was he? Bill Burr stood up for her. Other people she stood up for other actors too that were getting crap. But he never stood up for her. So why didn't he defend her? Perhaps the star of Disney Plus's biggest hit to date had her back if it could have changed Disney's mind. But it could have signaled to other Hollywood studios that she shouldn't be shunned if he had said something. Because everybody looks to him as like, oh, he's the voice of the people that are pro and that they're, of the far left. And he's the Hollywood leading man who has the rights of everybody in mind. He could have said, I know her and she's not like this. She's not like this at all. He could have. He didn't. Why didn't he? Because he was afraid it would hurt his career. He was afraid his sister get mad or whatever. But he didn't. He could have stood up and said something, but he didn't have the balls to. Shocker. He was afraid it would damage himself, so he kept his mouth shut. But he has no problem running his mouth off against anybody who thinks is anti, trans, anti, Democrat, whatever. He runs his mouth off constantly, alienating audiences right and left. And again, Zegler got, she said she wished no peace to conservatives, basically implied they were terrible people, got a talking to. But has Pascal got a talking to? I don't know. The whole thing just pisses me off because it's a bunch of double standards and the media is not helping. She won. It's over. It's done. She settled. Because they didn't want it to go to court. Guaranteed Disney would not settle with you and give you what you wanted and work with you again and have to eat crow and all that shit unless they were really, really trying to make sure it didn't go to discovery in court. So there had to be some really damning shit in there or they wouldn't be doing this. They don't just settle. It's an uphill battle. They only settle when they know they're going to lose. That's usually the case. Or it's a really bad PR nightmare. They double, triple down, calling her abhorrent just like a year ago. Now they're like, oh, we're kumbaya, we're best friends. They don't do that unless they have to. So, she never did anything wrong. And you people are just perpetuating this because you want it to be that people still hate her. And you're doing exactly what Disney did. And you're wrong. And who's to say they won't come after you for this kind of stuff? I'm not saying she will. I don't think she will because she's very nice and I don't think you're worth her time. And she's probably just wanting the nightmare over. Because she lost her agency, she lost her the gig at Star Wars, she had damage to her career and everything else. And she stood her ground because you have a right to, if Pedro Pascal and Rachel Zegler and all those people and Mark Ruffalo, Mark Hamill have a right to talk shit 24/7 on social media about politics, she had a right to her opinion on the other side. And they're mad. She's an election denier. She hated masks. Well, I'm sorry. Look how the masks turn out. And now they're questioning some of the election stuff as it's coming out. So, we don't even know yet if she was wrong about that one. Here's the thing. The other people say the same things. They can conspiracy theory all day long, and they're allowed to. So what Disney, if you're listening, because I know you do to these videos, what you need to do is you used to have social media guidelines, and I know you did because I had contracts that we weren't allowed to disparage Disney or anything that could cause Disney harm in social media posts. You need to reinitiate this for celebrities and people that work with you. And you need to say, hey, here's what you're going to do. If you're working on these projects, you have a contract with us and you want to work with us, then you agree that you're not going to go on social media and say X, Y, and Z thing. And you lay it out clearly. And then you enforce it evenly. Because this whole bullshit because the company clearly leans left and anybody who's on the right should be, because it's, they're rare to come out and say something. It's not rare in Hollywood. It's not as rare as you think, but they're afraid to say anything because they're afraid they won't get jobs. Because somebody says something or stands by what they believe and they do it in a positive way, you fire them, but you don't fire people doing the exact same thing on the left. You're the problem. You're going to be in more lawsuits. You're going to have yourself more trouble. Just initiate social media guidelines and then evenly enforce them. And you need to have a talking to your dumbasses who run the social media accounts at Lucasfilm. I hope those people are no longer there because they're a big part of why you're in trouble now. They're the ones who let her get harassed for months for something they knew wasn't true, but they were mad because she wouldn't capitulate to them and their friends. And then you let people, when Christina Ariel was out there saying stuff that was potentially racist and you defended them, and it was this Ingram and you defended them publicly. So that people like we don't stand for harassment unless you're harassing somebody on, like Gina Carano who doesn't agree with us politically. Then have at it. You're going to cause yourself problems. So you need to have a talking to your social media people, and you need to tell your executives to knock this shit off. And you might, while you're at it, you might want to tell Pedro Pascal to shut the fuck up too, because he will not stop talking. And I understand he's very passionate about these causes, and it's his right to say that. But if it's his right to be allowed to say that, then it was her right to be allowed to say what she wanted to say. You can't have it both ways. If he can go out there and make the comments he's making that are, possibly damaging to the company, and he's allowed to say it, she was allowed to say what she said. Because what she said was nowhere near as bad as the stuff he has been saying. Mark Hamill, that's another one. You got to watch him. He and Mark Ruffalo, they feel completely emboldened to say whatever the heck they want against half the country and half your audience. And again, their personal political stance is their own, and they're allowed to have it. I have no problem with them saying what they want to say and doing what they want to do. But if freedom of speech isn't freedom from consequence, how come they never face consequence but other people do? So the double standard has to stop. Again, Gina Carano, I don't know if you hear this or not, but congratulations. I'm glad you won. We, unlike other media outlets, never wavered this whole time. We've said it's been wrong since day one. We're still saying it's wrong now. And I hope that everything works out and you get to move forward. And if you end up in the Mandalorian movie or something, I'll be there. I wasn't going to watch it at all, but if you're in it, I will show up. Take that, Disney. And here's the thing, it's a dangerous situation, and don't be like these news outlets. So even if you don't agree with them, even if someone's on the left and you're on the right, or you're on the left and they're on the right, or whatever, just because they say something like what Ms. Carano said about the Holocaust doesn't mean that they're saying that conservatives like Jewish people. Just understand people are allowed to have different opinions. The problem is when those opinions are blown out of proportion, or the opinions actually do cross lines, legitimately cross lines. And we're not seeing it with her, but we're definitely seeing it with other people. And, it's a dangerous thing. Things aren't always black and white. Don't judge a person simply because they have a flag that you don't like, or they voted for somebody you don't like, or they have pronouns in their bio or whatever, unless they give you reason to. If they're coming at you, if they're being insufferable tools, then judge them by their behavior. Judge them by their actions. But this whole painting everybody, with a broad brush, everything's black and white, Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, it's ridiculous. You need to stop. Most people are in the middle. Most people, you go down the street, you don't know who people voted for unless they're wearing a shirt or a hat, or they have a flag or something. You don't know. And just because somebody identifies as something that usually is towards liberal or conservative leanings doesn't mean that they are. There's a lot of people that are Christian people that are not conservative. There's a lot of people that are like LGBTQ that aren't liberal. You don't know. You just don't know. So just stop assuming. Just judge people by their actions and how they treat others and how they treat you and how they behave. Don't judge people by what you assume they are. It's not, you don't like it now. You don't like when people do it to you now. I know a lot of you get mad about it. I know you get upset about it. Just, we all have to try to do better. And Disney, you definitely, if you're a family company, you need to try better. You need to try to do better, and you need to rein these people in. You need, again, guidelines, evenly enforced. All right. Sorry I went long. I was just really pissed about the whole situation. Please like and subscribe. Comment, let us know what you think. And we will talk to you later. Bye.
For more pop culture news, views, and rants, go to news.clownfishtv.com. That's news.clownfishtv.com.